Hello everyone, and welcome to Applied Social Media Marketing, the second webinar, a short course presented by IT Masters on behalf of Charles Sturt University. My name is Guy Coward and I'll be your MC, and your mentor, as always, is Andrew Mashman. Before we begin, just some housekeeping. As I said last week, but for first-time players, we encourage the asking of questions and the use of chat during the webinar, and we use two methods to do so. We ask that you direct all questions relevant to course content to the Q&A section, and that you send all administration type questions, dates, times, resource availability, for example, to the support team in chat. You can chat with panelists only, or to all your fellow students as well, and you can make that choice by toggling through the drop-down box once you've opened the chat log. There are usually some very experienced industry-based attendees who will be most helpful with any queries you may have, and we'll also have Q&A sessions periodically, so if there's a particularly relevant question, Andrew will get to that one. Angus is again around tonight in an administrative and technical support role for IT Masters. He's also responsible for the learn.itmasters.edu.au website, which is where you'll find the other materials needed for this course, links to readings, discussion forums, and quizzes, for example. If you have any questions, feel free to ask us during the week using the details listed on that page. We have another guest lecturer tonight, Amy Whitfield. Amy is a digital marketer and photographer who is also director of social fields. She'll pop in and out throughout the webinar and have a chat about what she's been up to. Finally, I'll talk a bit about CSU as promised at the end of the webinar, so hang around if you're keen for that one. But for now, please say good day to Andrew.
Mashman back again, and we've been unmuted. That's fantastic. Really looking forward to week 2 of our applied social media course. We had such a great time delivering it last week. It was pretty hectic because we had you know, Twitter, Facebook, and a bit of Instagram stuff going on. Since then, there's been lots of Twitter and Facebook going on. So we're really highlighting the applied component of the social media aspects of the course, and it's been a pleasure to actually bring that to people and to also interact with you guys in the social environment. And I just wanted to point everybody to the to both Twitter and Facebook, especially because both myself and some of our guest speakers, but also IT Masters and other students in the course have been posting some awesome resources into those spaces. And if you search under those hashtags of I Get Digital, Mad Marketing, and IT Masters, you're likely to pull those up. And you can start that search way out in Google, and it'll take you into different social media platforms to find some of the fantastic stuff that's been brought on. So tonight we've got a couple of things going on, and I'm just going to just tell you about how I go about this, because it will seem a little bit funny, just as a way to remind you about some of the things we talked about last week. I always run a few of the slides from the previous week right at the front of the deck, just to get everyone in the right frame and make sure people have got context for that. I'm just going to flick past this course because it's about the new Masters of Applied Digital Marketing, and I just have to reflect on my own personal experience. I went back to university. Actually, I went to university the first time as a mature age student, about 24, 25, and did my marketing degree, but I also went back as a purely distance student in my 30s to do my master's degree, and I've never really looked back. Doing study at the master's level, and even now, if you haven't got a degree already, you'd look directly at something like the graduate certificate and then moving into the master's. Masters will just change, and the graduate certificates just change the way you think and how you filter the information that comes through you in the world. And it's probably even less important what course you do, but the fact you go through the process of researching and checking and pitching your information back to the academics and getting the feedback they can provide on that. So it's an awesome thing to do. And why I particularly like the IT Masters model is that they bring industry-based certifications and industry-relevant subjects directly to the academic realm. And when you do a little bit of each, then you can graduate with graduate certificates, graduate diplomas, and master's degrees, which is a really cool thing. So if you haven't had a think about that, do have a think about it. And what we've been doing in this particular course here is picking up on components of an actual subject and working on how to deliver them to you. And we're week 2 into that. So part of where we're up to at the moment is we're looking at different social platforms. So last week we went through Twitter. I'm going to just go back to Twitter because there was a few things that I needed to show you and true enough, I did give you a little bit too much content last week, probably. So we'll get back into that and have a look. We're then going to talk about content that you can use on social platforms, a little bit about goals that you might be aiming for, and then Amy's going to talk in depth about Instagram tonight. So there's 2 platforms covered. And then next week, we'll have Beth Powell to talk about Facebook. All of our investigations and our presentations are based on a kind of a businessy sort of model. So people are using these social tools for their brand, for their cause, for their not-for-profit, because they want to achieve some goals. So raise awareness, raise money, awareness of political issues, from refugees to diseases, all those sort of things. And they also might be commercial brands that have got an awesome idea which could change the life of people who use it, from electric cars to new thongs to wear to clothes for summer, whatever those might be. So that's our first one there. We're working on doing the social platform strategy, and I'm going to show you where we're up to and where you should be up to on that one. And then the final one of the activity sheets is about an implementation plan to apply the strategy within an organization. So we're just on our way to that, having talked about the first tool, and we'll be looking at 3 more tools, and in the final week we're going to wrap up with how you might integrate those things together and make that happen. So hopefully that's going to be useful for everybody, and that's how things will come together for you. A couple of key things off this slide, and it's just the critical marketing thing. Lots of people think marketing's just about talking at people and doing stuff and chucking out a few posts, but you got to know who you want to talk to. And if you don't know who you want to talk to, you're really just yelling into space. Nothing's going to happen, and you're going to bug some people. And particularly these days, people are going to unsubscribe or block you and do those sort of things. So when you deliver the right message to people who are interested to hear about it, then the impact is massive, and they'll respond by asking you more questions, by clicking on your website, by buying your product or service, or by referring it to a friend. And that personal endorsement is a massively powerful thing. The other part of this slide, which is really important, is that every organization is different, and every organization will have different attitudes to how they communicate, how they sell, raise awareness, do all those sort of things. So you have to understand that also as you go to communicate to your customers. And when you're getting a lot of, not necessarily flack, but you're getting a lot of problems going to, say, social media, and there's still a lot of organizations out there who just go, well, no, we don't do social media in our organization. Then you need to work out how to pitch that, and is it actually relevant to that organization to do social media? And it may well be, or there might be examples where social media is not a relevant tool for many organizations. Put those 2 things together, customers and what the organization wants to achieve, and you've got an awesome winning strategy to drive you through. So here we are tonight, and we're talking about content-driven social strategy. And over the past week or so, if you've been following the hashtags, you will have seen lots of different examples of content. And I'll talk about what I've just launched in a minute or so when I go through that. We're going to touch on goals and strategies, how they come together, which is really about customers and organization, what we'd like those guys to do. And then it's Instagram with Amy. The activity sheet from last week looked a lot like this, and this was an example that I supplied to you, and it probably makes a little bit more sense now. But we looked at Twitter last week, and really you're looking for what benefits this tool can bring to your strategy, to what you want to do with that. And Instagram, for example, is primarily a mobile tool. So if your people sit behind a desk and communicate during the middle of the day, Instagram's probably not likely for you. But if people are out and about, and photographs are really, really important to them, and for example, you're a tourism location, then Instagram could be a massively powerful thing for you. You need to know about your target market. In this case, I've just written something about a 30 to 50-year-old female business decision makers. They could be all sorts of people. They might be principals in schools. They might be marketing managers in or managers within communications-based firms. There's a lot of women in those kind of roles as well, and we wanted to reach them specifically. So we want to reach into particular people rather than shouting at everyone. And then we've got goals. We want to, in this case, increase the numbers of shares and comments in a particular window of time, January to March 2019. And as you probably have found out, and I'll show you some of the stats that I've been working on too, but my life has kind of nearly been consumed by social media in the last week or so. And I've moved from about 13 tweets a week to over 80 this week. And the results are great because that's what I was there to do. But it takes a lot of your time to do that. So you also have to be able to resource your social media plan. So more on these as we go through, but after tonight, you should be able to fill one of these in for the use of Instagram, and you'll have then kind of 2 pages of aspects about tools which you may or may not use, but you'll be able to then coordinate those together into more of a digital strategy, digital communication strategy using social media tools. Which is this page here, the digital marketing implementation and integration. And in week 4, you will be able to put the detail together about an objective for Twitter, for example, who the target market is, when are we doing that, who's responsible for making that happen, what's the detail of what we're going to do in that space, and what things will we use to integrate this, i.e. we might use the same logos or graphics or people, or we might use the same call to action or same website link, same color schemes, all sorts of things. And then obviously we want to manage our progress and make sure we're on the money for doing that. So hence that last column for that one as well. Excellent. So just a couple of other points to revamp, to recap on last week. Social is getting massive. It's growing massively in Australia. Mobile's growing faster than any other mechanism for using the internet. So that's pretty big. Most Australians, except for Guy, I think we discovered, have got smartphones. And so there's a lot of stuff going on around feature-based phones, they're called as well. And then average daily social media use is around 1 hour and 40. And that's, you know, it's massive. And if you can put people in front of your brand name, your memes, your graphics, your food, your product, your service, your cause for any, you know, substantial part of that time, then it's a very, very powerful thing for you to make that happen. So lots of things going on in that space. The last point I wanted to make there on that one is Australians are worried about data privacy. And one of the big things that's happened over the last week is that they've just extended the opt-out of the National Healthcare database system or healthcare card system until the end of January, because they've already been bombarded with over 1.5 million people who are concerned about what happens when the government's got your digital health record. And, you know, I believe maybe 800 or 8,000 people potentially could access that record. So that's something that Australians are concerned about. And when you are talking to your customers, you need to find out what sort of things they're concerned about as well. From a business front, which we talked about the sort of position, we've got goals to get. Social channels are driving new opportunities to broadcast, new ways to go forward. And we pushed out a video this afternoon. You'll notice that it was in portrait mode instead of landscape mode. And there's quite a bit more stuff happening about shooting stuff in portrait mode, because that's the way most people hold their mobile phones. So it's a quirky little wacky nuance, but it's something that's changing. So if you're still shooting landscape videos when your audience is likely to look at the video in portrait mode, you need to think about whether that's right or wrong for what you're doing at the moment. Definitely there's lots of targetable groups in the social media space, more about that as we go on. And lots of opportunities to maybe experiment, because you can fail quickly in social media and you can fail forward, which our friend Alicia Booth would definitely say, and move on to the next thing really quickly and improve your game very quickly based on the feedback you're likely to receive just about instantaneously. So here we are at Twitter, and tonight I've launched out 2 tweets just before we started to find out whether cute furry dogs particularly, and I'll talk about why it's a dog a little bit later, is good content, or pictures of people are really good content for you to do. So if you're following us on Twitter tonight, you'll see those 2 posts. Search the hashtags I Get Digital or Mad Marketing or IT Masters, and they'll come up for you. And I want people to like them or not, and share them or not. And we'll just look later in the night to see how that went in terms of which kind of pictorial content worked better for us. Clearly, there's a lot of things that happen around animals on social media, and they're very popular. But I would say the second most popular thing for sure is pictures of people. And so here's a snapshot of my screen for this week up until late this afternoon. And you can see the numbers right at the top of the screen are from a week ago. And I'd done about 50 tweets and I was up 250%. I'm up 800% there. The big one for me is that over 1,200 people have visited my profile in the last week, which is up nearly 1,800, 1,900%. And mentions of my handle at @amashman have gone up some huge 6,000%. So there wasn't much going on before. But what it highlights is for an organization to get involved in social media to drive a conversation with their clients, you just have to invest some time and material, and you can reach out and you can make a change to groups of people very quickly. And you'll notice on the far right of the screen, last week we were sitting at about 8,700 impressions, and we're over probably just under 24,000 right now impressions. So there's been a big ramp up in what's happened with Twitter, just purely on my increased usage of those kind of things as well. Now we're just going to duck out to the Twitter sphere and have a quick look at that. I've got a couple of screens of Twitter open, which I wanted to show you some stuff on. So a couple of things I didn't show you last week, which people we know use on Twitter a lot, and one of them is search. And across the top bar, and I'm just using it in the internet browser here, searches in different places on different tools like your mobile phone. And up the top here, I've put in I Get Digital. We can see that is in the box there, and I've just stripped the drop down on that one. I'm just going to change this one now to the IT Masters. That'll be a good one to do. And we can see it's happened there. There's a few things going on. I actually want the hashtag, so I'm going to click on that one. And it immediately brings up all of the results that have happened in that space. Good news for IT Masters is that they come up at the top of the list as the main person that's been using the IT Masters hashtag, which is really good. And then underneath that, there's a range of content which has all been has been shared into that particular space. Now there's my cute puppy, and it's got 12 likes already and 3 retweets, which is pretty good. So it's going to build for some pretty good engagement. And I'm just looking to see if the other one pops in there. There's my ugly mug portrait video. So I've had 9 likes on that one, which is kind of good as well. And my other one's not there just at this second, so I'll have to have a look for that one. But anyhow, searching is really good. So if we're interested in something that happened to Qantas, for example, so we just punch in hashtag Qantas, and we can have a look and see what's going on in that space. And this airline particularly uses social media, as does Air New Zealand, and you can see some different things that are happening in that space. Qantas would use this if they had a flight delay, etc. You'll notice this block here, Defence Jobs Australia, they like Qantas in a positive kind of way, and they pay money to put in graphics and a tweet into their feed. So that's what the promoted box is for you as well. So that's a search tool. It's really powerful and does lots of cool things for you as well. I'm just going to duck to another screen now, which has got a different view of it. This one here is back to my homepage. I'm just going to go to the next one there. So this is my profile opened up where we can start to see stuff that's been going on for me. I want to show you a couple of things there. We did talk about tweets, following, followers. Likes is where I can review the things that I've liked over any period of time. And when I open that up, you can just see the likes that have been done here just recently. So Steph, hi Steph, how you going? And Lewis and Danielle have had some interesting stuff, which I've got there. So I've liked those things. And these are people diving into the course tonight. Lewis's thing was pretty cool because he's got some other guys who are on the course together. They've chatted about applied social media over lunch, and then I've asked him if he's got any insights that came out of their lunchtime meeting. So some pretty cool stuff there, and that comes out of things that I've liked, and particularly if I was tracking a competitor, if I was tracking a particular thing. And another thing I do is in education and around STEM education, I can track things under the likes that I've done. I can also have lists, and these are quite cool. And I set up a list last week under the hashtag Mad Marketing. And if you go to my profile, you can find this hashtag and you can join it and follow it. And so I'm just going to click into that one for a second. And I've added people to my Mad Marketing list, which include IT Masters. It includes Alicia. She's down there as well with some of the stuff she's done. I think Anne got included on it as well. Amy was definitely there, and a few other people. But everything that comes up with the Mad Marketing hashtag, things that those people do specifically around that, gets incorporated into this list. And some people have lots and lots of lists as, again, a way to curate bits and pieces of information that they might like to look at. Now I'm just going to go to my other home screen here again. And we're going to look at my tweets for a second. I want to see our top tweets. Just going to go to view your top tweets because I have a few things on this I wanted to have a look at. So the graph here, and we just touched on this a little bit last week, highlights where the action's coming from and where there was some paid and organic impressions as well. interestingly, some of the stuff that I've shared, for example, the top 7 marketing challenges, really high engagement at 5.8%. That's a really good thing. Some things very uninteresting, and you can use that knowledge to change the content, change the text, the pictures, the graphics, the video, all of those kind of things that might be out there as well. Interestingly enough, I did share a video, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later, but nearly no engagement in that one at all. So given that 5.7 billion people have already seen that video, it's not new and it's not interesting in my Twitter feed for people to look at. Another one I wanted to quickly show you is audiences. And here we can see who are my followers and who are Twitter followers. And this leads me to the concept about why I have chosen a dog. So up the top here, we can see my followers, and that's giving me a profile of my followers, which is the dark red lines in the graphs down here. And then secondly, I've chosen a group which is all Twitter users. So what we talked about last week, probably a bit of a male skew, educated, those kind of things. Then they're in the lighter reddish, kind of pinkish color there as well. Now, of my followers and of all Twitter followers, then my followers particularly like tech news. In fact, they like it a lot more than most others. Interestingly though, my followers are less likely to like dogs than they are all Twitter users. I'm fascinated by that one, why dogs are such a high scorer on that space. But that's the kind of thing that tells you why quirky videos of dogs and cats are doing well in the social media space as well. For my followers particularly, science news is big, and that'll be because I'm following a lot of STEM science-based people, and there's a few quite influential scientist type people which I do follow. We see on the other side of the screen here that we've got some stuff going on around household incomes. And again, my users are a little bit less likely in terms of this income level. They're a little bit higher paid in this space here for a fairly sizable group for them. And on the scale of things, there's obviously some quite well paid people that I follow along things. So maybe if I had a high value product, or if I was pitching a startup for money, then maybe some people in my audience might be really quite relevant to that and good at making that happen. So there you go. There's a couple more things about Twitter just to bring that back into context for you and help us make that happen. Last week, you probably remember Tim Hill was online with us talking about his analytics tool. Just wanted to remind you that IT Masters students can sign up using this link and get an extended trial of his analytics stuff. And then it goes on to be a free service, but it sort of reduced capability after the end of the course. So it's just another thing that's out there. Try it. If you love it, awesome. If you don't love it, that's fine as well. Thanks for doing that, Tim. And I know Tim's following us on social media tonight, and he'll probably come back in week 5 for us as well. So a couple of things now, moving into the content space and social mat forums. There's 3 things, and again, I've tweeted some stuff from Jeff Bullis. Jeff is massive in terms of what's going on in social media and marketing generally, and he's got a list of 12 do's of content, and I just grabbed the first 3. Make your content unique, specific, and relevant, and I'm sure that Amy's going to reinforce that a little bit later when she shows us some of the stuff you got going on. And my example here on the right side of the screen is the Desposito video clip from Louis Fonsi. It's had just under 5.6 billion views. 5.6 billion views. If you haven't seen it, and it's pretty unlikely that anybody on here tonight has not seen it, given that particular number and who's got an internet connection in the world, which is pretty close. I'm sure there's a lot of people who've been over it a few times. Have a look at it. Check it out, because I'm going to talk about it in a second. Down the bottom, we've got the massively well-resourced Katy Perry and Taylor Swift just chugging away at 2.6 billion views each of particular songs. And the thing that I wanted to make about this particular point for content was the Desposito video clip it's a beautiful production, no question about it. It's got quite high production values, but it's earthy. It's full of people. It's full of people having fun. It's got music. It's got good-looking people in it. It's novel in terms of, culture and a whole bunch of things, but it's not a mega-budget video piece. The other end of the scale, we've got Taylor Swift and Katy Perry. They would be able to do whatever they like in terms of, dance and people and artists and locations and everything else you like. So the point I want to make there is think about the content you would like to make and how you can make it happen. And I think the bottom line is there's no barriers for anyone to make cool content. You just have to think about what assets you've got, how do you make them work for you, and then how do you make them work in social media for you particularly. Check out that video if you haven't, and it's good. Another quick content example that popped up just this week as well. A friend of mine, and this is off Instagram, snapped this photo from his drone up at Moreton Island, which is the one on the left. He managed to get 83 likes and 6 comments on that piece of footage. But the person who did see that piece of footage was Queensland Tourism, which is, you can see on the right side of the screen there. It's Queensland, which you can go and follow on Instagram as well. And clearly they're very interested in promoting Queensland. But for this guy who is quite into his photography and interested in that, Queensland's picked up, they've asked permission to use his particular photograph, which they do on the whale, and they could launch it out there. And again, over a period of about 6 hours, they pulled 6,000 likes for that particular piece of, also, it's a great piece of content. There's no question about it. It's a beautiful image and people would like that. For Tourism Queensland, it's just made their job of selling Queensland as a tourism destination that little bit easier. Now, if you were, and Queensland Tourism is a commercial operation, so they're using content there to grow their business through, in this case, an awesome piece of photographic content, which is a lovely thing to do. So a couple of notes here. This is from Marketing Profit, which is a group that publishes quite a lot of stuff around using content on social media channels, particularly in social media. So I wanted to launch into a couple of these. Most companies can tie revenue impact directly to content. So Tourism Queensland could do that, I'm sure, and would definitely be doing that. People realise, or companies realise, that personalised content is spectacular, but not many people can actually deliver it on a real-time basis. So that's problematic, and that's a challenge that people have to overcome as well. There's some stuff about which content outperformed others. The biggest challenge here for content teams are people-related. So all respondents identifying team alignment. So, you get these wacky social media people, and then actually finding them in the first place as being a really difficult challenge. So your social media strategy, and particularly your content strategy, is likely to be hampered by both finding the right people and having them available for the right amount of time. And as mentioned earlier tonight, certainly I've been spending probably a couple of hours a day on social media this week and last week. And so it's not without its cost, big time. So you need to get results for it. So organizations need to tie in how we're going to do this, give those people this time and space to be creative and do things, and then actually make it happen and be supportive of making that happen as well. Now, I'm just going to introduce Amy quickly, and then she's going to come back in again after a few more slides that I've had. Amy is someone I've been known for, maybe it's 10 years or so now, Amy, I think. And she's been a student of mine at Charles Sturt University, which was fantastic and a great experience for me, and hopefully it was for her as well. And she's certainly gone on to do some pretty cool things. But the standout feature of Amy for me was that, and this would be kind of 8 years ago, I think now, that Barack Obama followed Amy Whitfield on Twitter. So of all the followers she had, Barack Obama was an active follower of Amy. And for me, that made her famous. So I'd like to introduce you now, Amy, and do you want to talk about your world of content?
Yeah, hi guys. Thanks for having me here tonight. I just speaking to those last slides, my whole world revolves around the visual content side of things. So I've worked for Pedestrian TV in their content arm, and they're a pop culture website, and I managed all of Sports Girls digital content. So set up a lot of processes in there when it comes to managing content calendars in between like a big business and e-commerce and an agency, and setting up like the e-commerce ROI, that kind of thing with those guys. And then I've also worked in-house at the Lucas Group, which is a restaurant business down in Melbourne. So after that, I was taking photos for a lot of different brands with a lot of big personalities within that group. And then for the past couple of years, I've been working in my own business, so being the owner and director of Social Fields, my agency. So that's a bit of a background for me. Just taking photos and creating content for brands, whether I publish for them or whether I give them the resources and libraries of images to publish themselves, is basically what I do, filling in that middle bit. So next slide, please, Andrew. So looking through the types of content there are. We think of photography and video, yeah, we see a lot of that, and our attention spans lean towards absorbing that. But there are a lot of other ways that you can support your content by adding different formats. So even on Twitter, in our conversations this week, I was chatting to, I think it's Vincent, who's a DJ, and we were discussing different ways that he can promote his music. And one of them was creating playlists where he was featured amongst other artists, and in order to be shared further than his just his followers. So amplifying through using other people. And we thought that was a fun idea. So you guys will probably have content that on board in your business already ready to go, but you can transform it and communicate it in different ways. And there's lots of them right there. So next slide, please, Andrew. So I've got my top 4 content tips here. So there are really countless ways to represent or portray your business on social, but these are a few of the principles that I try to stick to for the brands that I collaborate with. So you can make great content with what you already have. If you've got an iPhone, you can create awesome content. My top tip under that is just wipe your camera lens on your shirt before every photo. Because if you've got a clear image, you're good to go. You can edit, you can do so many things. So just start with that clear image would be my top tip. The next is to personify your brand. So I remember I've been chatting with businesses and they're about to launch on social, but they're not quite sure, like they have this blockage in their mind. They're not quite sure how to come up with content, where to start. And my advice is to personify your brand. Pretend your brand is a person. What do they like? What are they interested in? Who are their friends? How do they talk? Do they use slang? Like all the different facets of a personality in a person, to list that. And then when it comes to creating your content, you can think through those eyes. Like, what would my brand as a person, what would they be talking about? Or what would they, how would they talk? Or how would they have conversations with others and get that two-way engagement going? My next tip would be to align your content themes with your business objectives. So if you want, I work with a lot of cafes, and restaurants. I'm going to be probably referencing that mostly because that's the world that I've been creating content for most recently. So for example, if you're a cafe and you have a beautiful interior, make sure you always have a stream of content ready focusing on the interior. Or if you have the best waffles, have your waffles dancing, have them moving around. Focus on those business things that you're good at in your business and shout them out in different ways and get conversation happening about what you do best. And try and think of interesting ways to let people know. And also be consistent with your style. That's my final tip there. I would say whether it's your copywriting style, so your tone of voice with your persona that you've created, keep that consistent. Keep your frequency consistent as well. And also keep your editing style consistent. So if somebody glanced at your post as they're flipping through Instagram and they think, oh, wow, okay, that's another post from Kitty Burns or whatever brand that you're publishing by, they can identify it immediately by the colors and the way it looks and feels. So if they're glancing at your profile, they definitely know it's a part of your mix that fits in really well. I might hand back over to Andrew now to talk about goals and strategy.
Excellent. Thanks, Amy. It's totally, the coolest thing that I guess the internet and particularly social media has brought to us, that anybody can become a publisher. I mean, you have to be careful about that, which is, I guess, why we're here tonight to a certain extent. But everybody's got some cool things. And whether it's dancing waffles or it's, industrial cement bricks, there's cool things you can do to cut through to the audience that you want to talk to. And the audience that wants some cement bricks to pave their backyard, for example, is going to be on the lookout for that. So if you can make your product stand out, if you can picture it uniquely, if you can, as you said, personify the brand, Amy, these are all cool things. And they are within reach of the smallest small business. And in some ways, they're nearly more of a struggle for very big businesses because there's so much to coordinate and so much stuff to get their head around to make that happen. So there you go. Now, Guy, did you want to launch one of your surveys tonight?
Well, I think we're going to talk about Instagram just in a few more slides. So maybe we've got a couple of polls about Instagrams, folks, that we'll find out what you're up to with that first. But I thought if Amy, you're still around, Nadine just asked a question. How do you manage being consistent with your style when you have multiple submitters for your brand?
That's a great question. So consistent with your style when you've got multiple people working on your brand, I would say that one person should keep that tone of voice in check. So find that guardian in your business that keeps looks over every bit of copy and is the guardian of the voice. And then I would also say, so that's for your captioning. For imagery, you can have editing styles and brand guidelines, just like you've got brand guidelines for the use of your logo. You can have brand guidelines for the publishing of images from your business. They might all have a similar tone, or they might all be shot from an angle that's bird's eye view, or just come up with different rules that keep it consistent, that within the themes that you post about. That would be my advice.
Great, thank you. We'll probably save the rest of the questions for just before Instagram, have a nice big Q&A session, and then launch into the Instagram part of the webinar.
Excellent. Thanks, Amy and Guy. And I think that the Instagram, the Queensland name, I think if we look through their photographs, if you can do this as homework, check out the style of the way they picture Queensland or they promote Queensland. You'll find that there'll be very high photographic values, and the language will be quite targeted. So that'd be an example to follow for that one as well. So just thinking about goals and strategy, and I've pitched this as your goal, your strategy. Don't go and do something unless you've got what outcome would I like from this? Why would I want this to work for me? What's it going to do for me? Because not that I'm overly worried about it, but risk in social media is a bit of a big issue, and we're going to deal with that in a few weeks' time. But if you're going to launch into social media, you can't just stop and start. You have to be consistent, as we've just mentioned. You have to be consistent with the approach and the language and maybe the content as well. So you want to have a goal for that. What's it going to do for you? It's going to take time and resources and people. So you need to have a think about how's that going to work for you. So choosing a tool is really important. And that's where one of the first questions in my activity sheet is about what's the capability of this tool for me? And if you've got awesome amounts of 7-second videos, then you're talking to a really young audience, so maybe Snapchat's the really cool tool for you. If you want to communicate a lot of text, or you want to put a lot of graphical ideas together, then maybe Pinterest is a better tool for you to do that. If you can be short and sweet and say things between 140 and 280 characters, then Twitter might be the mechanism that's going to work best for you. And so you need to be really conscious about that rather than just blasting off at the first thing, or particularly, and one of the posts on the forum said, what do we start with Twitter? Well, you have to understand each tool in its own right and be particularly careful not to go with the one that you're most comfortable with, because while you're most comfortable to use it, it may not be the one that your audience uses or utilizes or collects new information from or makes purchase decision from. So what's going on there? What resources do you have at your disposal? This is really critical. And, many organizations I see, they go off in a flurry of social media activity, but person leaves, people get sick, someone goes on holidays, and you've got this audience which has been following along looking for your daily or weekly posts, but then it goes quiet for a month. Or there's just a few text bits and no more photographs and those kind of things. So you need to make sure you've got the people who are committed and available to do it. And a number of people that I've worked with, some of the best people have been public transport commuters. And the last one that I know particularly was in Melbourne. She caught a tram to work. She was on the tram for about 35 minutes or so. She would look through the 3 accounts that the company ran. She would be liking, sharing, retweeting, whatever the particular mechanism was that she was using, and she could do that in 35 minutes on her way to work. And the business sort of empowered her. That was her work time to be able to do that as well. And then when she got to the office, that part of the day was kind of done and dusted. It all happened on the mobile, which is the right tool usually to use as well. And then she'd do a few things during the day, and then she might have another look at it during the afternoon and on the way home at night. So make sure you've got the right people with the right tools and the right time availability to make this, to continue the conversation for you. Particularly important, what do your target markets want? And if your target market is millennials and then they're shedding Facebook like it's going out of fashion, then putting a big Facebook campaign in targeting them might be less valuable than you might think it is. And certainly if they like moving pictures or games or gamification of activities or winning prizes, unless you do those things for them, you're not going to get a lot of traction or engagement in that. So have a think, get out, do some survey. Always my favorite thing, go out and talk to some of your customers or some of your would-be customers, ask them what they think. And it's such a simple thing to do, but people don't do it as much as they should, and they fall back to, oh, we've always done it this way, so let's just keep going. It's not good enough in this day and age to sort of work around on that one as well. And then the last part of goal setting is, what is the ultimate end game for you? Do you want views, engagements? Do you want to raise money for our particular cause? Do we want sales particularly? Do we want referrals or shares? And I have to say, for me, and I'm still disappointed because I'm working on that too, been getting lots of views across the Twitter channel particularly, but the engagement number is not as high as I could like to make it, and as I'd like to demonstrate to you that we could make it as well. So I'm working hard on what can I do on engagement. And that brings me just quickly to the Twitter feed with the 4 people post has got currently, for me anyhow, 17 likes and 3 shares. But the dog has got 33 likes and 4 shares. So it comes back to maybe many people on Twitter being very fond of dogs and a little bit less fond of people. But if that was just text only, then very little would have happened at all. So think about what your game is, what you need to do, and how you're going to make it happen. So clever marketers are, they get all over this stuff. They spend the time strategizing. They set the goals, which will be aligned to their organizational strategy, and they keep going forward. And that helps them know whether they're doing the right actions or they're just kind of shooting for the hip because there's a cool new tool out there and we'd like to have a play with it. This is a graphic from Tim's slides from last week, and this awareness, interest, desire, action funnel is a cool thing, and Tim's put some numbers on the side of that. But one of the pure fundamentals of marketing, which applies as much, in fact, more in social media than nearly anywhere else, is that if people don't know who you are, then they cannot do anything for you at all. They have to be aware in the first place. If in that first instant you do not catch their interest, then they fall out of your pipeline very, very quickly. So you need to do something interesting rather than not interesting at the end of the day. A smaller group will go, wow, that shot of Tangalooma Reef or Rex, wherever it was in Queensland, that's pretty cool. I'm going to put it on the bucket list for a Queensland holiday. And at that point, hopefully Queensland has picked up on that. They've followed them. They've seen them like that. They've seen, hey, this is on my bucket list. And they're going to go back to them with some kind of offer or something that causes them to take action to take that Queensland-based holiday. And then the funnel's completed. If you're just out there raising awareness and you don't convert that to something else, you're wasting both time and money. And likewise, if you get to anywhere else in the chain and don't convert that, it's problematic. Doesn't matter if you're a not-for-profit in the NDIS scheme, if you're the world's biggest commercial company, then you need action at the end of the day. So you've got to look at the end game and say, hey, we want to create some action around this post. So in the 2 posts I did with the dog and the people, I've put the link to this free short course there as a place where we'll be able to measure, did anything actually happen in the space? So moving on to this slide here, and before we get back into the Instagram thing and we can talk some Q&A and do some polling. This is a really interesting one from Pew, which I came across also earlier in the week here. And if you look down the side of the list, you'll see people who use each of these different tools. And then across the top of the list, you can see who also use a particular tool. And of people who use Facebook for sure, then around 90% of them also use LinkedIn, or 90% of LinkedIn users also use Facebook. So that's a kind of cool thing. So that might lead you to a campaign to, raise awareness of your business offer or product or service or think tank or whatever it might be in the LinkedIn environment, but you might be able to do conversions in the Facebook environment to make that happen. We might find, there was another good one there too. So Snapchat users and YouTube, and clearly in the music video market or maybe in the music market altogether, short snippets across Snapchat, driving people to your YouTube channel could be massively powerful and really important. And if Snapchat users do not use YouTube and you're trying to drive them to your video, the link's broken probably before you start. So this graphic's quite interesting. Have a think about who your target markets are, which tools they're using, and which other tools they're using, so you could create some synergy across those 2 platforms. Yay, we're back to Amy, Guy. Did you want to do some Q&A now, and then we'll set Amy loose to tell us all about Instagram?
Yeah, beauty. Thanks for that. We'll start with a question from Caroline, who asked a little while ago when we were talking about considering creating video in portrait, not landscape. Caroline was wondering, as content can now be rendered based on the platform or operating system, can it also be rendered in portrait or landscape video by any intelligence coming through from a smart device indicating which way it's being held?
I think it can, but what you might end up with is sort of shutters on the side of that. And I have to say, I'm not really expert in that, but I did read an article the other week, which caused me to shoot that video that way, which was all about the way you hold the phone and then the way the video is finally presented to you. And I guess for a low budget production like myself, the fact that I could shoot it in that mode and have it play back in that mode is good, rather than maybe losing some screen footage, etc., to having it shot in the wrong mode, or having people annoyed because they've got to kind of rotate their phone around while they're riding the bus or the train to watch the content, as it might be as well. So that's not an awesome answer. I'm sorry. Amy, have you got any points on that one in terms of video, portrait, or landscape?
Specific. Am I there? I would say it's platform specific. If you're viewing a video on Instagram, for example, it is portrait on stories, same with on Snapchat, and even things like IGTV. So that's the like the YouTube that exists within Instagram, which is gaining traction at the moment. Yeah, people are creating whole video series based around that vertical video. That's the way a lot of us are holding our phones, and it's just an easy way to consume, but not a lot of people are placing focus on creating like that yet. So I would say it's evolving.
Cool, thanks.
While we've got both of you on, Ian K has asked, could tone or style be copyrighted? We were talking earlier about making sure that we were keeping it consistent.
You can copyright anything. It's just the legalities when it comes to enforcing it. If once you get to the court, it's all based by the book. So you can try and copyright anything you like, but it's got to hold up in court at the end of the day. So I wonder if you could copyright a filter. That's an interesting thing to think about.
A couple of questions on Twitter for either of you. Nancy has asked what the benefit of hashtags in Twitter is if search results return non-tagged matches. And also Nadine has asked, how does Twitter figure out the income of followers and all users?
I'll hand that one over to Andrew, I think. His Twitter favorite.
Cool. I think in terms of search, if you search specifically for a hashtag, it'll pull results for that most specifically. They do use a complex algorithm around what you search for and what you find as well. So it won't necessarily always be just the hashtag stuff. They might find that there's been other things that are related to that which had a certain amount of profile or had a lot of views, and they might throw that into the feed as well. So it's algorithmically based and not just a pure hashtag search. And part of that from Twitter, Google's the expert in this one too, is that they want to bring you what they perceive to be the best possible set of results for the things that you might be looking for. And in the Google space, certainly things you've searched for previously, items you may have bought, places you may have been, will influence how that sort of search comes back. And certainly from what I understand, Twitter is playing in that space as well. What was the second question, Guy?
Oh, I think I just moved it. Just one sec.
Sorry about
that. This is why you ask only one question at a time, by the way, folks.
And I've got a short memory. There's no problem.
Okay. How does Twitter figure out the income of followers and all users?
Good question. They survey different people. Certain information goes in when you set up your account, but they also profile people based on, and that's why that information would heavily be US skewed. So I'm just trying to think of the name of the company, there's a number of massive data bank people in the US, and they're very, very, very heavily used in election campaigns over there to profile audiences. What they do is they wash your information against those databases. So it's sort of like literally washing. They run your details past these databases. In Australia, it happens there's a group called VEDA, who do, I think, around 60 to 70% of credit card transactions in Australia. They also allow companies to wash their databases against their information. And they might find, for example, Aim Ashman, they might find him over here, they might find that he works sometimes for Charles Sturt Uni, they might find that he shops at these shops, they might find that he's actually reported his income in certain levels. So what they're doing when they profile customers like that, it's not just purely what they know from your Twitter interactions or your sign up, but a range of other tools where they're putting data together. And that is really the crux of big data. And it's happening on a global basis. That is why people are really concerned when Facebook and their Cambridge Analytica thing happens, when their shared login API material happens as well, because data that is connected to you that you probably didn't provide in the first place is being shared to other people, and they put that together with even more information, and then suddenly you end up with spam emails, you end up with very cleverly personalized emails about bank accounts or products you may have bought and those kind of things as well. So it's not all Twitter's pure data. It comes from a range of different sources, which these Axiom, I think it's called, is definitely one of the ones that does it. And yeah, they're washing all sorts of consumer data against user lists of different platforms.
Okay, and maybe last one for now from Victoria, who I was actually speaking with earlier today. G'day, Victoria. Victoria gets the sense that perhaps Facebook and Twitter can serve the same function. Is there much of a difference? Is there much of a crossover? And I guess that can be extended to all other kinds of social medias.
I think what we'll find when we get to Beth's session next week about Facebook is that the target audience is it's massive, 2 billion users on Facebook. So clearly there's a lot of people who are on Facebook who are also on Instagram and Twitter and Snapchat and WeChat and a whole range of other places. But I think there's a lot going on Facebook that says it's good at delivering on some promises. It's certainly a great space for small businesses to set up a website and then in a really cost-effective way reach out to different audiences. You could say that about Twitter as well, but I think in the profile I talked about who's using Twitter, education levels, income levels, some of those kind of things, at the end of the day, we'd say that Twitter is useful for some slightly different things to what Facebook is. The limitation on the text is one part of that too. The life and availability of, tweets do go on forever, but they're harder to find, seconds after they've been launched, really. Whereas Facebook probably has a longer memory in terms of being able to find stuff that you've seen in a feed somewhere and to be able to search it as well. That's, I would say. I think if they were head to head, it'd be problematic because neither one or the other wouldn't survive if that was the case. So I think the fact that both Facebook and Twitter, and certainly Twitter because they're very small compared to Facebook, has survived, says it's serving a slightly different need to what Facebook does.
Beauty, thank you. All right, well, maybe I'll launch this first poll about people's current Instagram use. We'll start with, to what extent do you already use Instagram to promote your brand? We've got not at all, very little, I dabble but I'm not making a concerted effort, and I rely on Instagram as a key part of my brand.
Excellent, look at that.
And we've had an average of about 250 attendees all webinars so far. And so far we've got about 175 of those voted.
Excellent.
And again,
the buy-in. I love everyone's getting involved in that. Thank you very much for doing that.
And again, for those watching the recording, we'll post a screenshot of the answers later on.
It's good. So you can see there's a lot of people who are just really not in that place at all, and I guess they'll be very interested to see what Amy's got to say. I'm always concerned about the dabbling because that's, chuck a few posts out there, see what happens, and it's unlikely to give you awesome results anyhow, and you'll find it kind of time consuming and you won't know whether you're coming or going or should invest more or not as well. But there's 22% of people out there, and maybe they'll share some stories on the forum and other things that have got Instagram down as a key part of their brand, so that's pretty neat.
Yeah, so final figures, 39% not at all, 13% very little, 27% I dabble, and 22% I rely on Instagram as a key part of my brand. Any insights into that, Amy?
Oh, it's super interesting. Yeah, I live in Instagram, so it's cool. It's cool to hopefully share some ideas and things tonight.
Beauty.
There's a lot more people to meet, obviously.
All right, so I'll take a screen grab of that. Sorry, I think I was just talking while I was muted. I've got a screenshot of that poll result now. Feel free to kick into it. We've got another poll coming up, and that's about how many brands people follow. Maybe just let me know when you want that one to be launched, Amy.
Awesome, no worries.
Floor's yours, Amy.
Great. All right, so first up, I found a interesting stats from the Census Yellow Pages social media report that comes out every year. And it's based on brands and trust. And we all know that we buy from brands we trust. And you're more likely to trust a brand if you find their content engaging and relevant, and if the brand interacts with customers in a positive way on social. But not so much if they have a large number of followers on Instagram. So it looks like the credibility from a large following isn't as important as if you had engaging content and you were positively interacting. That is, I found super interesting. And another stat I found was that 25 million businesses have Instagram profiles worldwide, but only 2 million of them. Next slide, please, Andrew. Sorry, I skipped ahead there without saying next slide.
Sorry.
There we go. And only 2 million advertisers are using Instagram for Business to advertise their account. And with the data that Facebook has, because Facebook owns Instagram, there's certainly a lot of potential to drill down in targeting a really well-defined audience, because on Facebook, especially if you have a product or an online service or anything like that, you can drill down even to purchase behavior, job titles. I'm sure Beth will talk a lot more about advertising next week, but the advertising functionality on Facebook and Instagram has got a lot of potential to reach new people and potential customers. Next slide, please. It's just loading. So jumping into the Instagram content basics, a lot of you, especially if Instagram's a key part of your brand, this will be a rehash, but here's some basics for those who are new to the platform. So we have our post to feed, which are just the posts that you take a photo, caption, hashtags. You've got your stories, which was added to Instagram when Snapchat was around, but Snapchat wasn't happy to sell to Instagram, so Instagram said, let's make our own. And so now there's a 24-hour expiring stories function within Instagram. There's also an IGTV, which is the YouTube version of Instagram. So that has series. Analyzing my own behavior, I am not yet clicking on that because I don't find that enough people are creating content that I'm interested in on there yet. So as a marketer, I see, there's potential. If I can create something great, it'll stand out there. But as a user, I know that I'm not gravitating towards that yet. So that's an interesting one to think about. Next slide. So we've got the importance of the grid. So this is where the photos that you post go. And this is the place where people land when they type in your brand on Instagram. If you have a page, they'll see all of your posts here. It is the first impression of your brand, and it is what your visual identity is. Whatever you land on here really speaks a lot to whether somebody will follow you, and it sets the content expectations of what they're likely to see. I think a lot about color in what I do because I cross over the digital manager and photographer creative business lines, and color really is a huge thing when I think about the personalities of the brands that I work with. if I'm working with an Italian restaurant, I'm making sure all the reds are really rich, deep reds. If I'm working at this cafe, Kitty Burns, I put everything on the blue tables because that really pops. It defines the little things, and the aesthetic. It really defines a brand in the strong visual world that is Instagram. Next slide, please. So I haven't done my daily post to Kitty Burns yet. I thought I would do that live, just to show those who aren't posting today for their brand. I've managed to bring up a browser window, which I'll just share for you now. And share to here. So I'll just do my, how do I get rid of this poll?
Okay, so we can see your screen now.
Awesome. So just do my daily post. Here's Kitty Burns' profile. I've done a little workaround. I've tricked my browser into thinking that I'm a phone, so I can post from the browser, which is a fun little workaround. I'll copy the caption that I've written. So I've added an image, popping in my caption that I've pre-written, and I can add a location.
Do you do this as a matter of course, using the computer as a phone?
No, I just thought it was the best way to live show a post heading up on Instagram.
I certainly agree, but yeah, just interested whether it would be a useful process.
I think it's a great emergency process. If you don't have your phone and you need to post, I think this is awesome. But normally if you're a brand manager, you can schedule posts. There are tools that you can schedule with. Let's see, where's our post now? So it's things like Schedugram and OnlyPulse let you post in advance. So you can create all your hashtags, and here's my hashtags here that I'm copy and pasted. They're all ready to go. And chuck them in the first comment. And that's my post for the day heading up on Kitty Burns' Instagram. So I'll just pop back into our presentation. Back to Andrew.
All right, so Andrew, you can share your screen again.
Did you guys know you could work around and trick your browser into thinking it was a phone? It was a fun thing for me to come up with.
Yeah, Jim was wondering how you do that in the questions. Maybe start a thread in the forum. We can a post about the how-to or something.
Sounds great. Sounds great. So with the post that I just did, there are 3 elements to it. So there was the photograph, so the caption, and the hashtag. So I'm going to quickly go through my thoughts on each of these elements to the Instagram content that was just published. So my top tips for Instagram photography is editing. Editing can make all of the difference. Clean your lens, have a nice photo, and then editing is a huge thing. Set the vibe, set the mood. You can see we've got a before and after photo, and I've increased the warmth in the image. I've increased how bright the image is. I've turned up the different colors, and I've turned down the blues. There are no blues in that image at all. Yeah, definitely define a style and stick to it. I would say it's essential to have a content library ready to go. So instead of thinking, oh, it's time to post to Instagram, what am I going to post? I need to go take a photo. I would say have a content library ready. So you've got a folder of photos that you can source from, that you can get your message out with. So whether that's creating a bunch of content with your brand and your team members, and if you've got the skills inside your business to create visuals, that's amazing. Have those visuals ready. But if you really don't have those skills in-house, hire a photographer to create you a library that you can source from in easy reach. I would also say create content that other people would like to regram. So that expands your reach into other audiences. So when I work with cafes, if they're using Keep Cup, or if they're using Remedy Kombucha, or any products that can be cross-promoted in order to reach a new audience and aim for regrams, that's also a great thing to think about, but definitely don't do that at the detriment of your own message. Yeah, just create strong visuals that best represent your brand, because the quality of the photos that you put out, every photo, is how your brand's going to be perceived. Next slide. And then the next thing was captions. So this is where your persona can really shine through, the one that we were talking about earlier, when you define who your brand is as a person. So I think the difference between a good account and a great account is the caption being full of personality, whatever that is. You might be authoritative and educational, and having an image to match that is high quality and represents your brand well. So finding that right person to speak on behalf of your business, and also having those strong images, is super important together. So I would say, yep, your persona comes out. And I've got an example here of a screenshot from a cafe that I've been working with since the start of Social Fields, and it's playful. Like, this persona is, I would say, a 14 to 17-year-old girl who loves walking down the Yarra Trail with her dog and eating waffles. It's very specific, but that allows me to post through that voice every single time. Your brand's identity might be the complete opposite of this, but it's still so relevant to have that defined. And then the third element on the next slide is hashtags. So with Kitty Burns, for example, hashtags are an aggregator. They help you find other people to follow that have the same interests. If you can follow hashtags now on Instagram, so you can follow Melbourne cafes and see the best of Melbourne cafes pop up in your feed every day. You can tap into different subcultures and interest groups, and it's best to put your official hashtag in your first caption, but in the comment underneath, put the remainder. You're allowed up to 30 on Instagram. And then next slide is, I'm going to talk through. Yes.
Sorry, just was there a particular reason why you do that?
In the first comment?
Yeah.
To keep it clean. So if you have a lot of people commenting under your photo, you basically can't see the hashtags there. But if you've got that first caption and you've got a long line of messy 30 hashtags, it's just messier and hard to decipher where the copy is and that kind of thing.
Awesome, thanks.
No worries. So for the launch strategy for Kitty Burns, for these people who are out there who are going to be launching their accounts, I just want to talk through my thoughts and what we did in the launch of this new cafe. So I chose the publishing channel Instagram because it definitely skewed towards the audience. I personified the brand and I created the character. I aligned the content themes with business objectives, so I make sure I show the interior, show the beautiful plates and the furniture, show puppies, so many dogs. Back to the dogs, Andrew. Like, they're some of the best performing posts for Kitty Burns are pet posts, whether it's a rabbit, whether it's a dog. We've had cats come to breakfast. It's a lot of fun, and the Kitty Burns brand is not ashamed of calling that out and reposting. I also took the photos that Instagrammers want to recreate. So I took the flat lay photos. I styled them and made them look really sharp and really clean, and like those Instagram goals accounts. I tried to aim for that, and then chat to Instagram famous and influencers and invited them in, and they recreated those same images. They said they would hold up the people still do. They come into the cafe and they say, "Oh, can I have this dish?" And it's a picture of an Instagram photo because they want to recreate the photo. It's about sharing the fun of photography at Kitty Burns, and I repost every week so people feel included in the feed, and that encourages more posts, and it was a great cycle for growth. I also run competitions for people to come in and dine, so simple tag a friend posts and do a little skills-based competition. So if it's a game of chance, you have to get permits, but if it's skills, you don't have to get permits. So you can say, describe your best friend in emojis, as this fun, playful account does, and that was the entry mechanism. And if both you and your best friend are following, that hopefully adds new followers each time we run competitions. Also encourage engagement by commenting. I'm consistent with style and frequency, and I let it evolve naturally. So once stories were implemented, for example, I started doing stories slowly that were relevant, and yeah, just evolving with the platform I think is important. So next slide. I wonder if is there any questions about anything at the moment?
We'll keep going for now. I think try and get through a bit.
So speaking about influencers, there are two schools of thought. You've got your micro influencers, which have anywhere from 1,000 to, I would say, around 10,000 followers, and though they have smaller audiences, they are often more organically real. So you've got no bots, you've got tighter geographies, tighter demographics. So partnering with an influencer, I would say try and find an influencer that aligns with your business. Whereas the million follower Instagram accounts might have scattered demographics all over the world, and that's great if your product reaches that far. But I think we should be aiming more smaller, more local, peer-to-peer style versus global broadcast when it comes to promoting products on Instagram. And it's also now compulsory for influencers to disclose whether it is sponsored content, whether they have content, whether they have been paid to post. And there are also agencies to help you connect with influencers. So sites like The Right Fit or Scrunch or Tribe are the in-between influencer and brand platforms that can help you connect with people who can amplify your brand through creating their own content. And then touching quickly on Instagram bots. So these million, trillion follower accounts must have a lot of fake followers. And you check that. There is fake followers and different websites that you can log into and search for your Instagram name and see how many followers fake followers that people have. You'll see random vague comments. I think we're on the next slide, Andrew. Random or fake comments, and it's best to really not, sorry, where are we? Organic. Okay, yeah, organic followers convert to sales, bots don't. So try and think about your influencers without bots. Organic is best, I would say. Don't grow your account with bots because real people aren't valued. So next slide, we've got Instagram e-commerce. So this is something that Instagram implemented this year. Products can be tagged on images. At the moment, Instagram sends you to a product website, but at the moment, they're currently implementing the ability to put your credit card into Instagram so you never have to leave and you can buy everything you could ever want within Instagram. And that is the goal at the moment. It's also exciting that Instagram is developing that shopping technology. It's common to hear in Instagram stories, swipe up to shop. So you can have a link in your story if you have over 10,000 followers and encourage them to swipe up. And you can also pop your link in your bio for shopping. I touched on Instagram advertising before, and I think Beth will with Facebook advertising next week. It's very similar. Next slide. And then hand in hand with Instagram's ability to shop, they're also improving their analytics. So currently all the reporting is done within the app, but Instagram are rolling out the beta mode for deeper reporting at the moment. So you can sign up if you have any brands that need that analytics backend. I'll put a link to the beta sign up in the forum. So it's not just reach and follows, it's about engagement and click-through rate with Instagram. And the third-party analytics like our insights that we were speaking about before can help. So whether it's social status, Hootsuite, Iconosquare, those kind of things can help with reporting. You can schedule and review with Schedugram and Omnipult. These are all my favorite apps for editing. I love Visco, I love Lightroom. I love live planning in Google Docs, and getting instant feedback is a lot of fun. And yeah, this is my toolkit. I'd probably head over for any questions now.
Okay, and there's a bunch of them. There's a lot of questions about repeating the influencer companies and
so they're on this as well. So influencer marketing, we've got The Right Fit, Scrunch, and Tribe. Yeah.
So just go, if you also want to get like any stories or recommendations, I recommend going to the forums and saying, hey, what do people think about this particular area? We've got any good recommendations. So we'll maybe go through those questions later. But there's a couple of really interesting questions. Sarah's asked, what are your thoughts about reposting the exact Insta post to Facebook through Insta?
That's something that I do as a highlight. I know that would probably get on the nerves of some marketers, but I think if it's a post that's performed really well on Instagram and it got a lot of engagement, you could take that image and take that caption and not directly share it, but reformat it so it's appropriate for the platform and post it on Facebook as well.
Cool. A couple of questions about Insta grids, where they've got like the 3x3 pictures and they sort of make one picture. Any position on that one personally?
I would say before you launch your account, you can do big grids and creative things. One thing that you can do that I've done with brands is if you've got pictures side by side, they can fall off and go to the next line. So they are not always attached to each other, which can make your grid look messy. But if you have pictures that are on top of each other in the feed, they move together and they never separate. So you can do things in a vertical line and they will always stick together. So I've done long table posts where you have two sides of the table vertically stuck together. And as long as each image alone by itself is a strong image, that could be an interesting way to post.
Thank you. And we've got a few questions about, I guess, different hashtag opinions. Some saying we need more, people are saying a new algorithm means you should use less. Do you have a recommendation of how many?
I would say the more relevant, the better. Instagram doesn't like when you post the same block of hashtags over and over again. That doesn't rank well in the algorithm. If you can customize your hashtags for each post, you don't necessarily have to max them out every time. But if it's a post about interiors and you can see particular furniture, you can tag furniture brands with hashtags, or architecture. Stuff that's niche and related to the picture will always work better than if it's just a blanket drop full of hashtags every time.
Awesome. Thank you. Conscious of time, so there's a heap of good questions there, but if we haven't got to yours, please do ask it in the forum. As I say every week, there's literally hundreds of people who have, varying levels of experience, but there's some very experienced people that help you out, and we'll be looking at the forums as well. So I reckon maybe we keep on trucking, and I guess bring Andrew back into the discussion. Is there any sort of further insights you have, Andrew?
Oh, thanks, Guy. And wow, Amy, that's fantastic material. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and how you actually make the nuts and bolts of that work, and how on the scale of things, a small cafe like Kitty Burns, which I'm going to next time I'm in Melbourne for sure, can have 30,000 followers and be, have people coming in going, I want to eat this picture. That's what I want to have. So fantastic work. That's really good. And I hope everyone's really enjoyed hearing from that. So I'm very excited about that. Guy, I'm pretty much right, because I'm ready to say this is what's going to happen next week. What other questions or polling or anything would you like to do?
Yeah. We'll launch that second poll now. And this is a question of how many brands do you currently follow? It'll be interesting to see, I think, whether people that are actually using it a particular amount, whether it actually follows that they're following as brands as well. And it looks like, I must say that this is probably an indication of poor research design, and people like me creating the questions. 20 or more probably isn't enough of a high tranche. But we've got, how many brands do you currently follow? None. 1 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 or more, or just what my friends ask me to, and 20 or more is clearly the leader.
Which makes a pretty busy feed at the end of the day, doesn't it? If they're posting a couple of times a day each or something like that. So that's quite interesting. But
does it get a bit sort of lost in the ether, or is that just something that you would expect everyone would do?
Well, even friends' content gets lost in the ether on Instagram. It's really just the top content that shines through, the one that's got the most engagement. So we just always aim for engagement on Instagram.
Okay, thanks. I'll share this poll, grab a screen grab. And as you can see, 20 or more with 36% of the vote.
There you go. So there's lots of potential there as other people are not really seeing that as a place to find brands. And that could be because they're not that interested in that, or brands haven't really reached out to inspire them to learn about their food, clothing, motor vehicles, whatever it might be that could be of interest to people in the Instagram space. And for me personally, Instagram is very much about the photographs and what you can see, and sort of like I suppose a bit more of an emotional attachment to that. And it's really easy to scroll past, non-stunning photographs in that space. So if you're going to communicate as a brand in that space, you need to really understand what your clients will click on or swipe on, I suppose, to make that happen.
Okay. Cool. Amy, do you have any final insights or comments before we get into what we're talking about next session?
I just think I'm just so excited. I love that I could be here and present, and it was really fun. Thanks for having me.
No, real pleasure. Come back anytime.
Awesome.
All of the guest lecturers have been involved in both webinars so far. It's been a lot of fun. And actually, as we're talking about next session, Andrew, Beth had a great idea of asking people in another poll what they're most interested in hearing about for Facebook next week. So I'll launch that one while you have a chat about what's going on. And thank you, Amy.
What a great thing. So likewise with Amy, thank you so much for contributing. And it has been such a blast doing this. And I just love all the side conversations going on about topics here, which is really good. And next week we have Beth Powell, who is an absolute Facebook for Business guru, I guess. She also has the best profile shot that I've seen. So I'm looking forward to having Beth on board. And Beth and I used to work together in a variety of locations around training and stuff. And Beth's gone on to write a book, forge a real space in the Facebook marketplace. So we're so lucky to have her on board. And you guys have got a poll out there at the moment about what people would like to hear about. And organic posts is scoring quite well, as is analytics and Facebook Business Manager, which is so important for organizations. And particularly as it either, and I'm not sure, but it either does or it's about to include Instagram analytics as well. So that's going on.
I think again the question design is a little bit silly. I gave it a multiple choice, so I might end this poll, quickly edit it in the old Zoom space, and say only choose one, please.
Okay, there you go, guys. So we're going to rejig that poll. Just get your first choice. In the world of the paid, earned, and owned, organic's obviously the awesome thing to get. If you can get people clicking and liking and sharing and buying through your organic posts, that's the most magnificent place to be. But purely because of the busyness of Facebook, being able to reach out into different interest groups, different age groups, different whatever groups they might be, often requires a little bit of money, and sometimes doesn't require as much money as you might imagine. And then you can open doors into many new spaces where people might be interested in your products or services. So the advertising aspect, and that's why next week's pitched as the world's biggest marketplace with more than 1 billion users, and a high proportion of that who use it every day or every week for sure. There's a massive number of people out there, and Facebook every single day gets smarter and smarter at how they let you address those audiences and how they can make that pay for you. They have had their difficulties because of the data issues, and that's definitely put a few people off. But I guess social media is a way of life, and people having the data protected is just another one of the considerations that's kind of out there. What have we found now, Guy?
We found that I've screwed with Zoom too much and asked too much of it.
Zoom locked up on us.
Yeah, so we'll just have to use the poll that I actually put in. But we got some good data in that one, so it looks like managing Facebook for your business is the big one, and then I guess the second two would be organic posts and analytics and Facebook Business Manager.
And I think I can imagine why that's good. And again, from the smallest startup to quite large businesses, Facebook could be a very focused platform for you to spend a lot of time and effort and resources on, and reach a lot of people and take that conversation all the way from kind of awareness to interest, action, desire, and then ultimately action by driving them maybe to your website, certainly shopping within Facebook or within Facebook Messenger, and that seems to be a growing space as well. These are all awesome opportunities for any organization. So that's what we're going to be looking at next week. I'm looking forward to having Beth on. She's a great person, great speaker, and she'll have lots of great information for us, as Amy has done, as Tim has done last week. And then we've got Alicia, and I know Alicia's online doing some social for us tonight. She's also a rock star in terms of how this stuff's going to come together for organizations. So really exciting to be part of this course. Thanks to IFT Masters for helping us make it happen. And I'll hand you back to Guy to wrap things up. Thank you.
No, thank you, Andrew, and thank you, Amy. And thanks, everyone, for coming along. Thanks, Angus, for keeping people entertained in the chat. I do hope that you're all paying attention in there. Recordings will be available within 24 hours, and all resources will be available by then too. Yeah, and please keep on posting in the forum any questions you have about Amy's content or any sort of, I guess, fleshing out of the issues covered would be really welcomed. And also, perhaps if you want to, for Beth next week, actually really define what it is what you're interested in hearing about, you can chuck a couple of threads in the forums there too. Anyway, thanks everyone for being involved. We'll speak with you next week.